Imagine this: a young waitress, invisible to the world, serving dishes she can only dream of tasting. One night, a bored billionaire dares her to play the piano in front of a room full of judgmental elites. But what he doesn't know is that she hasn't touched a piano in years. Not since the day her mother died and her dreams were buried. When she sits down, the room falls silent. What happens next will leave you breathless. This isn't just a story about music. It's about revenge, redemption, and the moment a nobody becomes a legend. Are you ready to hear how one song changed everything? The air inside the high-end restaurant shimmered with quiet luxury. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware scraped against porcelain, and soft jazz whispered from hidden speakers. Everything was perfect, except for the young waitress weaving between tables. Her uniform was slightly worn, her expression careful but tired. Her name was Lily. Lily had spent the last 6 hours on her feet, serving dishes she could never afford, smiling at people who never saw her. People like the man at table 5, Ethan Blackwood, the billionaire. He was ruthless, arrogant, and untouchable. He didn't just own businesses, he owned people. His presence filled the room like an unspoken law. And tonight, he was bored. Bored men like him made their own entertainment. Lily approached his table, setting down an expensive bottle of wine. Before she could step away, Ethan's voice cut through the chatter. "Tell me, waitress, do you play?" Lily blinked. "Play?" Ethan gestured lazily toward the glossy black, grand piano in the corner of the room. It sat untouched, a silent masterpiece, a challenge. A hush spread through the surrounding tables. Lily's throat tightened. Why was he asking this? Ethan leaned back, swirling his wine. "Well," his voice carried a dangerous amusement. "Surely you've had dreams. Or have you spent your whole life just serving?" The words sliced through her. Everyone was watching now. The restaurant had fallen into an uneasy silence. Lily could feel the weight of their stares pressing down on her, waiting to see if she would fold. Ethan smirked. He knew she'd say no. Then, loud enough for all to hear, he made his move. "I'll make it interesting. Play something decent, and I'll tip you $100. If you refuse," he shrugged, "guess we'll all know why." Laughter rippled through his table. It wasn't a request. It was a dare, a trap. Lily's heart pounded. She hadn't touched a piano in years. Not since her mother's funeral, not since the music had been buried along with her. Her fingers curled into fists. She could walk away, pretend she didn't care. But then what? Let him win? Let them all think she was nothing? Something inside her snapped. She turned, not away, but toward the piano. The weight of the room pressed against Lily's back as she crossed the restaurant floor. The polished black grand piano loomed ahead, its glossy surface reflecting the glow of the chandeliers. Her pulse pounded in her ears, each step feeling heavier than the last. She could feel their eyes on her, watching, waiting, judging. Behind her, Ethan Blackwood leaned back in his chair, smirking, swirling his wine like a man who had already won. Around him, his colleagues exchanged amused glances, their interest piqued. They expected a disaster. A girl too afraid, too weak, too unworthy to belong anywhere near an instrument as grand as this one. Lily swallowed hard as she reached the piano. Her fingers trembled as she brushed against the keys. It had been years since she last played. Years since her mother's voice had encouraged her, since music had been her escape, her safe place. But life had stolen that from her, burying her dreams beneath unpaid bills and endless shifts. A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "We're waiting." Ethan, bored, impatient, ready to see her fail. Lily inhaled slowly, shutting out the noise, the stares, the crushing weight of expectation. She wasn't playing for them, not for Ethan, not for the money. She was playing for herself. And so, with one final breath, she pressed the first key. A single note rang through the air, clear and haunting. A shiver ran through her spine as her fingers moved, hesitant at first, then faster, smoother, guided by something deep inside her. The muscle memory she thought she had lost came rushing back, weaving through her fingertips like magic. The melody rose, soft at first, then swelling into something breathtaking. The room, once filled with low murmurs and quiet laughter, fell silent, completely silent. Ethan's smirk faded. The executives, once amused, now sat frozen in their seats, their wine glasses untouched, their conversations forgotten. Lily's hands danced across the keys, her body swaying slightly as the music took over. She wasn't just playing. She was feeling every note, living inside it, pouring years of buried pain, hope, and longing into the melody. It wasn't just beautiful, it was soul-stirring. Somewhere in the crowd, a fork clattered against a plate as a diner let it slip from their fingers. A server, mid-step, paused, utterly transfixed. A couple who had been deep in conversation stopped speaking, their eyes locked on Lily as if they had never heard anything like this before. Ethan's fingers tightened around his glass. He had expected a joke, a moment of awkward fumbling, an embarrassed laugh. Not this. Never this. Lily closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. For the first time in years, she felt weightless, untouchable, and powerful. The final note rang out, lingering in the stunned silence that followed. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then someone gasped loud. It was followed by a single clap, then another, and another, until the entire restaurant erupted into applause. Ethan Blackwood sat completely still, his smirk wiped clean off his face. The applause crashed over Lily like a tidal wave. It was deafening, raw, unstoppable. People were standing, diners in expensive suits and glittering gowns, their meals forgotten, clapping with an intensity that sent vibrations through the marble floor. The restaurant had transformed, not into a place of judgment, but into a stage where something unforgettable had just unfolded. Lily sat frozen at the piano, her fingers still resting on the keys. Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. Had that really just happened? She turned her head slightly, scanning the room. Disbelief, awe, pure emotion, it was written on every face. From the servers lining the walls to the executive crowd at Ethan Blackwood's table. Except Ethan. He had not moved. He had not clapped. His fingers curled around his wine glass, but his grip was tense. His eyes, once filled with smug amusement, were now locked onto Lily, calculating, cold. She had ruined his game, stolen his moment of mockery, and turned it into something extraordinary. A manager, an older gentleman with sharp eyes and a tailored suit, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable, but his gaze lingered on Lily with something close to admiration. "Miss, where did you learn to play like that?" Lily opened her mouth, but no words came. She didn't have an answer. Where had she learned? From a mother who had once dreamed for her? From stolen moments at the community center before it closed down? From an old keyboard in her childhood bedroom, the one she had sold to keep the lights on? She never had lessons, never had the luxury of formal training. Only love, only loss. Ethan finally moved, setting his glass down with a deliberate clink. The room, still buzzing with excitement, quieted just enough. "All right," he said, his voice smooth but edged with something sharp. "You played. I owe you a tip." A cruel smile curled on his lips as he reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet, and flicked a crisp $100 bill onto the piano. It landed in front of Lily, stark and insulting against the polished black surface, mocking. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room, but they died quickly. The energy had shifted. The admiration, the respect Lily had just won. Ethan wanted to strip it away with a single gesture. Lily looked down at the bill, then back up at him. She could take it, walk away, let him believe he still had control. Or, Lily slowly picked up the bill between two fingers. Her hands no longer trembled. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was clear, strong. "Keep it," she said. "You look like you need it more than me." A collective inhale. Ethan's smirk faltered. Someone whistled from across the restaurant. A few people laughed, not at Lily this time, but at Ethan, the billionaire who had tried to humiliate a waitress and had instead been left speechless. Lily set the bill down gently next to his glass, then turned and walked away. Not toward the kitchen, not back to clearing tables. She walked past the diners, past the stunned servers, right out the front door. Her shift was not over, but something inside her was. She had been made to feel small her entire life. Tonight, she had shown the world she was anything but. As she stepped outside, the cool night air wrapped around her, crisp and electric. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from something else entirely, freedom. And she had no idea what was coming next. "Excuse me, Mississippi." Lily turned. A tall man in a sleek navy blue suit stood just outside the restaurant. His expression was unreadable. He was older, his silver hair perfectly styled, his posture confident. This was someone important, she could tell, just by the way people passing by instinctively stepped out of his way. "I need a word," he said. Lily tensed. Was he a manager? Someone who had been offended by her walking out? But then she saw his eyes, not angry, but curious, intrigued. I should probably get back inside," she said, glancing toward the entrance. The man's lips twitched into a knowing smile. "I doubt you need to." Lily hesitated. Something about his presence made her stomach flip, not in fear, but in anticipation. "Let me introduce myself," he said, offering a hand. "Daniel Carter." Her breath caught. That name. She knew that name. Daniel Carter, a world-renowned music producer, the man behind some of the biggest names in classical and modern piano. Lily's pulse roared in her ears. "I was inside," Carter continued, his voice smooth, controlled. "I heard you play." He let those words settle, studying her face carefully. "You don't just play the piano, Miss Lily. You feel the music. And that," he said, his eyes glinting with something sharp, something knowing, "is something that cannot be taught." Lily opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Was this real? "I won't waste your time," Carter went on. "People spend years training to do what you just did in there. And yet, you played as if you had been waiting your whole life for that moment." Lily swallowed hard. I haven't played in years." "That," Carter said, "makes it even more remarkable." A car pulled up to the curb, a sleek black town car, the kind that whispered luxury without having to announce it. The driver stepped out, opening the back door. Carter reached into his pocket and handed Lily a card. "My personal number. Call me," he said. Then, with a small knowing nod, he added, "That is, unless you'd rather keep waiting tables." Lily's breath hitched. He turned, stepping into the car without another word. The door shut, and within seconds, the vehicle disappeared down the street, leaving Lily standing there, the card burning in her fingertips. Her world had just shifted, and for the first time in years, she had a choice. Lily stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the card in her hands. Daniel Carter, a man whose name carried weight in the world of music, a man who had just offered her something she never dreamed possible. The restaurant behind her felt like a distant memory. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses no longer mattered. This moment, this card, held her entire future. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced the embossed lettering. Call him. That was all she had to do. But then what? Lily had spent so long just surviving that she had forgotten what it felt like to dream. She took a deep breath, shoving the card into her pocket. Not now. Not while her emotions were still tangled. She needed to clear her head. She started walking, the cool night air crisp against her skin. The city was alive. Taxi horns, distant music, the rhythmic hum of footsteps on pavement. But inside, Lily felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into the unknown. Could she really do this? Did she even deserve this chance? Her feet carried her to a familiar place before she even realized it. The tiny apartment she had fought so hard to keep. She unlocked the door, stepping inside. The small space was cluttered but cozy, the only place that had ever truly been hers. She sank onto the couch, pulling out the card again. The name practically glowed under the dim light. She had spent years believing her dreams were out of reach, that she was destined to work double shifts, scraping by while life happened around her. But tonight had proven something different. She had talent. She had power. And now, she had a choice. Her phone sat on the coffee table. One call. That was all it would take. Lily's heart pounded as she picked it up, her fingers hovering over the keypad. She could feel the weight of her past clawing at her, reminding her of every failure, every disappointment. What if she wasn't good enough? What if this was just a cruel joke? What if she failed? No. She clenched her jaw, shaking off the doubt. She had already been at the bottom. She had nothing left to lose. With a deep breath, she dialed the number. One ring. 2. 3. Then, "This is Daniel." His voice was calm, controlled. Lily's throat went dry. What was she supposed to say? She forced herself to speak. "It's Lily, from the restaurant." A pause. Then, the faintest hint of amusement. That was fast. I was expecting you to take at least a few days. Lily swallowed. I don't want to wait anymore. Another pause. Then, a chuckle, not mocking, not cruel, but genuine. Good, Carter said. Meet me tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. sharp. Lily exhaled, her hands gripping the phone. This was real. Where? She asked. A location pinged on her screen. A private studio in Los Angeles. See you then, Carter said. The call ended. Lily set the phone down, her hands shaking. Tomorrow. Her life was about to change. And this time, she was ready. Lily barely slept that night. Her mind raced with possibilities, fears, and excitement. Was this real? Was she about to step into a world she had long given up on? When the morning sun finally spilled through her window, she knew this was it. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple yet professional outfit. Nothing flashy. She wanted her music to speak for itself. By 9:45 a.m., she stood outside the address Daniel Carter had sent her. The building was sleek, modern, with tinted glass windows that revealed nothing of what lay inside. This wasn't just any studio. This was where legends were made. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The receptionist greeted her with a polite nod. Mr. Carter is expecting you. A few minutes later, Lily found herself standing in a breathtaking studio. The walls were lined with platinum records, each a testament to Carter's influence in the music industry. A grand piano sat in the center of the room, its polished surface gleaming under the soft lighting. Carter stood near it, speaking to another man, a well-dressed figure with sharp eyes. When he saw Lily, he waved her over. You're early, Carter said, a small smile playing on his lips. I didn't want to waste your time, Lily replied. Good, he said, gesturing to the piano. Let's see if last night was just a fluke. Lily's stomach tightened. This was the moment. She walked over, running her fingers along the keys. She could feel the weight of history here. How many legends had sat on this very bench? How many had started just like this? She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to play. The first note rang out, crisp and clear. Then another, and another. The world faded. She was no longer in a studio with Daniel Carter watching her every move. She was home. The music poured out of her like a river breaking through a dam. Every note carried years of longing, of lost dreams, of silent nights where she thought she would never play again. She didn't just play, she told a story. When the last note echoed through the room, Lily finally opened her eyes. Silence. She looked up, her breath hitching. Carter and the other man were staring, not with boredom, not with polite approval, but with shock. The other man, who Lily now realized was someone important, turned to Carter. She's the one. Carter nodded, his expression unreadable. Then he clapped his hands together. Lily, he said, his voice measured. How would you feel about signing a contract today? Lily's breath stopped. She blinked. A contract? Carter leaned against the piano, studying her. I don't waste time. You have something rare, something powerful. I would like to help you shape it into something the world will never forget. Lily's pulse thundered. This wasn't just an opportunity. This was the opportunity. The past, the restaurant, the years of struggling, the self-doubt, all of it led to this moment. Her fingers curled against the keys. She had spent years believing she was just a waitress, that her dreams were foolish, impossible. But now, she was about to prove to the world that she was so much more. She lifted her chin, meeting Carter's gaze. Where do I sign? As Lily signed the contract, a sense of triumph washed over her. But just as she thought her journey was beginning, Carter dropped a bombshell. There's one more thing, he said, his tone serious. Your first performance will be at Madison Square Garden. In 2 weeks. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Madison Square Garden? The pinnacle of musical achievement? She had gone from a waitress to a star overnight. But the pressure was immense. Could she handle it? Carter saw the fear in her eyes and smiled. You've already proven yourself, Lily. This is just the beginning. As she left the studio, Lily felt a mix of excitement and terror. She had fought so hard to get here, but the real challenge was just beginning, and she was ready to face it, head on. Lily stepped out into the sunlight, the contract in her hand and a fire in her heart. She had been made to feel small her entire life. But now, she was unstoppable. The world was about to hear her voice, and it would never be the same again. Friends, Lily's story is more than just a tale of music and triumph. It's a reminder that no matter how invisible or small the world makes you feel, your voice matters. Your dreams matter. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one bold decision, to change everything. Lily didn't just play the piano that night. She played her way into a new life. And if she can do it, so can you. So what's your piano? What's that one thing you've been too afraid to try? Too scared to chase? Maybe it's time to sit down, take a deep breath, and press that first key. Because you never know, your moment might be just one song away. If this story inspired you, or gave you chills, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends and family, and if you want more powerful and emotional stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss an update. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below about this story, and if you enjoyed this story, give it a big thumbs up. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that touch hearts and inspire change. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.